Sometimes one of the hardest things about climbing mountains is actually just choosing what you're going to do. So if you're struggling to pick your next goal, whether it's your first mountain or whether you're really experienced but you're just kind of stuck in a rut and you don't know what to choose, ask yourself these 9 questions. By the end of this video, you'll have a much clearer path. Welcome to the channel. My name is Chase. If you're new here, this is all about preparing your mind and body and your gear so you can go further into the mountains, challenge yourself and grow from that experience. And in this video, what we're talking about is goal setting. Super important. I think a lot of people will bite off more than they can chew, or choose something that's not quite challenging enough. And if you haven't done much climbing, it's really hard to know what's going to be right for you. So the first question that you want to ask yourself is, do you want to challenge yourself physically or technically? Or is it going to be a mix of both? They're the two real variables that we can change within mountaineering. I think a lot of people get really unnecessarily caught up in the actual height of the mountain and really start thinking about only in terms of meters and feet when it comes to mountains. But of course, there's so many other things to take into account, and the height of the mountain is really just one small variable of the whole greater picture. Having said that, people will go straight to the Himalayas and climb a 6,000 meter peak, but in general, I would recommend maybe cutting your teeth on something smaller before going to climb a 6,000 meter peak, because you don't know if you're really going to enjoy it. If you haven't done that much hiking or climbing before and you go straight to, taking 2 or 3 weeks out of your time in the Himalayas, then it might not be the best decision, I would say. Choose something smaller first, see if you like it, then maybe think about heading to the Himalayas. So for yourself, you might be really focusing on the physical aspects and wondering, are you fit enough and strong enough to be taking on this mountain? But if you're generally active and you've been keeping fit for most of your life, then the good news is, if you're in reasonable shape, the physical abilities and the physical fitness could come relatively quickly. What's more challenging is the technical aspect. This can take years and years and years to develop. So defining something within the next 12 months really comes down to answering the question of how skilled you are and how much experience you have with ropes and equipment and crampons, and understanding how all of these climbing systems work. If you don't have that experience, then probably where you're going to be getting the most out of that challenge is the physical side of things, choosing something that's physically demanding, and then the technical aspects will have to come over time, throughout practice, throughout doing courses and learning little things along the way. But this, of course, will all come down to what your overall goals are with mountaineering. If you want to move towards a more technical aspect and being completely independent in the mountains, then you should be leaning towards something that is more technical, something like a winter mountaineering course, or maybe you'd like to stay out of the snow for now and just focus on the rock climbing side of things. And I think doing a course like that, getting really involved for 7 to 8, 9, 10 days and getting intense learning during that time is something that will pay off down the track, because it enables you to be more independent. That leads into the second question, which is to ask yourself whether you want to be going guided or unguided. For me personally, the things that I want to do now are completely self-guided. Having said that, I've been on loads of guided trips in the past and I've got a lot out of those trips. Especially, you can go a lot higher and a lot further into the mountains and do more technical stuff when you are part of either a one-on-one guiding experience or maybe with a small group, especially in the Himalayas. But there's only so far and only so much you can learn whilst going on a guided trip. So it really comes down to where you're at in your career. I'd say that when you're starting off, if you're really new to the sport, and especially if you're new to the world of snow and ice and glaciers, then I think it's a really, really good idea to start off by going on something guided, just to see how you like it. If you really enjoyed that guided trip, then I would then recommend, again, going and doing a mountaineering course or some kind of snowcraft, and then moving from there. The third question that you want to ask yourself is, what's around me? What are the resources that I have within, an hour or two of driving of where I am that can help me become a better mountaineer? If you're living in a snowy winter environment where you've got mountains close by, that's amazing, because you'll have lots of different options. But not everyone has that. You might be living in the Netherlands and you'll have to do bouldering and climbing indoors to get your fix. I mean, when I was living in Australia, I did much more rock climbing because we had access to, not amazingly long routes, but we had, great multi-pitch routes within an hour of where I lived. And that's where I did a lot of my training and a lot of my practice of mountaineering was just going through multi-pitch routes over and over and over again and just dialing down those skills. So that's really helped me to be able to come here now to Spain and have the Pyrenees, and knowing that I'm completely confident in setting up multi-pitch climbs, setting my anchors, whether it's trad or on sport. I've built that skill level now on rock, and it's completely transferable to mixed ice, alpine, rock climbing. It's all relative to all types of climbing. So thinking about what the strengths are of the environment that you're in and playing to those strengths is something that you'll want to consider as well. The fourth question that you want to ask yourself is probably the most important one. It's the one that requires the most introspection and probably the most time. I think it's the most important question for you to ask yourself, and that is, why are you doing it? What is your compelling reason for you to go out into the mountains? I think this is a really important question to ask, because when things get difficult and you're sitting on a ledge, freezing your butt off, and there's a blizzard blowing into your face, it's really helpful to know what your motivations are, why you're out there. So again, I think a lot of people are a bit too spontaneous when they make decisions like this. It really helps to delve deeply into why you are motivated to go out into the mountains. What do you get out of it? How does it benefit your life in general, your normal life with your family and your relationships and your friends and your partners? How does this all relate back to who you are and what you do? And why is it so important to you? I mean, there's plenty of good reasons to just go out in the mountains without thinking about it too much, such as I want to challenge myself. I just want to see what I'm capable of. I want to test my limits. These are all great reasons to have, but the bigger the goal is, the bigger reasoning you're going to want to have, because like I said, when things get tough, that why is so important. For me personally, my compelling reason to climb is that I know that I'm becoming a better individual through this process. The soul searching, the self-evaluation, like this kind of stuff that we're doing, the training, the early mornings, the amount of organization it takes to be a climber forces me to be better and better every single day. So that's the compelling reason for me. Once you've dived through all that mess of assessing your motivation and your self-evaluation, then it's time to start thinking about who is going to be supporting you in this journey. So that's question number 5. So for this question, you're going to be asking yourself, who are the people around you within your friends and family circle that are going to be supporting you along this journey? And very few people are able to do these kind of things alone. It does always require a bit of support, whether it's something small, maybe you're asking for gear advice from a friend, or something, a lot more committing, like getting dropped off in the mountains and picked up on the other side. The people that are around you to help you do this are so important. And also think about who's going to be affected by the goal that you're taking on. This is an especially important thing if you're in a relationship. Then you're going to have that conversation around booking this trip. I mean, if you're going to be in the Himalayas for a month, that's obviously going to have an impact on your relationship. So that's why it's so important to have that compelling reason to really assess why you want to do this trip. So you're then able to have that conversation with the person and say, look, these are the reasons why I want to do this trip. This is what I want to get out of it. And this is how it's going to help me become a better person. This is a chance for you to share that compelling reason that you have for the goal and to get some buy-in from that person to help support you along the journey, because it is so important. At the same time as thinking about who's going to be supporting you in this goal, you might want to also consider who's not going to be supportive of you in this goal and kind of eliminate them as much as possible. There's always going to be haters. There's going to be people that will tell you you're not good enough or fit enough or strong enough. Completely forget about them, but also listen to your worst critic, who is probably yourself. If you've gone through this process and you've picked a goal that is really challenging, that demands a lot of you, definitely along this process, along the way, you're going to be doubting yourself. So just be prepared for that. Just be aware that many times through this process, you're probably going to be doubting yourself, but remember your compelling reason. Always come back to that to keep you motivated. Question number 6 that you want to ask yourself is, what are the steps that I need to take to help me get to that goal? So when I do initial consultations, when I talk to people about their goals, I will usually be working with someone who has a goal within 9 to 12 months. And I think that is a good time frame to work within. What we do from there is we have a look at that, 12-month-ish goal, and we say, okay, where is the first point at around about 3 months? What do I want to be achieving or doing around that 3-month mark? And at the same time, what do I want to be doing around the 6-month mark? So I'll help that person sit down, have a look at where they are geographically in the world, what challenges are nearby that they can go and do at that 3 and 6 month mark. We want to make sure that those things are relevant. We want to be sure that they are in some way taking bigger steps to their overall goal. So let's say their overall goal is a 6,000 meter peak in the Himalayas, then we want to be ticking off something around 2,000 meters high in that first 3 month mark, and then maybe taking 2, 3, 4 days to climb 2 or 3 3,000 meter peaks in a weekend. So we're kind of ticking off those meters, we're ticking off the kilometers, we're getting some practice with the skills, the equipment that we need out in the mountains, and that means that we've got a clear step process to work towards. Every 3 months or so, we've got something that we're working towards that's relevant to our bigger goal. Once you've got those goals to work towards, you want to get out a calendar, mark them in where you're going to be taking these trips and taking these little mini goals, as I call them, and planning it all out, structuring your planning, your training, your weekends, all towards those mini goals along the way. One thing that's super important once you have that long-term goal and you have those mini goals set in your calendar is to write them down. I think it's great to have like a digital landscape to be able to put that into, but honestly, I just do this on paper, and actually I can show you. Let's have a look. Let's get some light on this thing. So the first check that I ever got from YouTube up there to keep me motivated, and then just a bunch of different things. And as I go through the month, I just fill this blank paper out. So being able to review my goals every day simply by opening up my cupboard, I can see it all there. It really helps me focus on those goals that I know are important enough for me to write down and structure my whole year around. The 7th question that you want to ask yourself is, what are the potential barriers and limitations? What are the things that are going to be potential hurdles along the way that you kind of have to think about and plan for before they happen? So here's where we play the devil's advocate and think, what can go wrong with this trip, both in terms of things in general life, like what are my work commitments, what are my family and relationship commitments, where are things going to potentially get in the way, what things am I going to be missing out on by doing the training and the trip itself, taking all that into account, but also looking at what can go wrong with the trip, what's most likely to stop me from getting up this mountain. So especially if you're doing an unguided trip and you're supporting yourself, then you want to be looking at the weather window. What are the typical weather patterns around the time of year that you want to go there, or even choosing the time of year that you want to go there based on the weather patterns. I use 2 different websites to look into my mountain weather. I use yr.no, it's a Norwegian website. It's an incredible database of mountains all over the world. And then of course there's mountainforecast.com. I'll put links to those in the description. So thinking about what could go wrong, not just with the weather, but also having a backup plan to overcome that. I mean, if you get all the way out there and the weather is terrible, then you're probably going to want to have a backup plan, another mountain that you can go and do so that you're at least sort of getting something done, even though your main objective wasn't possible. When you go through this process of thinking about what could go wrong and really kind of being a little bit negative and imagining all the things that might potentially stop you from getting up the mountain, then you really start to eliminate or at least plan to deal with those things should they arise. So, if it can happen, it will happen. And in the world of mountaineering, I think I've failed far more times than I've actually succeeded. And that really is just a big part of it. And learning from that experience is probably the most important thing, and just bettering yourself every time. When it comes to hurdles and setbacks, there's probably going to be many along the way. I mean, that's just life. Things like this happen. But I think it's really important in those times to really bring it back to your overall motivation, your compelling reason for going out and doing this. That really helps. But at the same time, if that doesn't work, you can just outsource your motivation. Probably the biggest tip that I have for you is to set yourself a morning routine where you get up at the same time every day, you drink a cup of tea, you do stretching, maybe some meditation, and listen. I literally just type in motivation into YouTube and I watch a different motivational video every day. And it's just a great way to feel positive and feel psyched up about the day, to go out and smash the training, go to work, do what you've got to do, and get up and do it again the next day, because that's how hard work gets done. One thing I will say though is that if you were going through a really challenging time and you're really low on motivation and you don't think you're going to be able to get through it, just remember your compelling reason, and also just be thankful that you had the choice of this challenge. There's plenty of people that have challenges in their life that they didn't choose. So just remember that you are really fortunate, be grateful, have gratitude for the things that you have, and hopefully that'll help you get yourself back on track. Question number 8 is, what skills am I missing? What do you have to learn in the coming months for you to be able to stay safe, to be able to move around the mountains, to be able to achieve what you want to be able to achieve? If you are going unguided, if you're completely supported just by yourself and your friends, then it's likely you're probably going to have to brush up on a couple of important techniques, whether it's rope work or whether it's glacier travel or weather in the mountains. There's probably a lot of things that you can learn just online or by getting a couple of decent books. I mean, if you haven't heard of a book called The Freedom of the Hills, I would highly recommend you get that, because that is your textbook for mountaineering. I mean, it's important to learn the practical side of things and to actually, practice these knots and have an instructor to help you learn them. But a lot of those things that you can learn in the mountaineering course, you'll forget, instantly. So it's great to have a textbook like that to be able to go back through and to review all that information and to practice your knots. And these are the things that you can do to help build your knowledge along the way, so that you're safer in the mountains and so that you're learning. And it's basically free. I mean, you can pick this book up from maybe $20 or something, and it is basically a goldmine of knowledge for mountaineers. So that one is highly recommended. We'll put a link in the description so you can check it out. The final and most practical question you'll probably have to ask yourself is, what is the overall cost of this trip going to be? Obviously you've got flights if you're doing something overseas, then you've got the guiding, you've got insurance, don't forget to get insurance. You'll have to make sure that you've got everything on the gear list as well. So going through budgeting out your trip is a kind of a boring but a really necessary part of expedition management, and that really is a whole separate set of skills that you need to learn if you're going to not only go on guided trips, but especially as you get into self-guiding and organizing trips yourself. You're really going to have to put a lot of thought and a lot of planning into putting together the trip. I mean, honestly, mountaineering most of the time is 80% organization and then 20% actually getting out and going on the mountain. So it is really a logistical nightmare a lot of the time. If you don't have all the gear and if you don't have the money and the resources, then you're going to have to take a more simple approach to things. And that's why things like these emerging sort of quasi-sports of trail alpinism and like trail running, like really extreme sort of ultra trail running, are great because they allow you access to the mountains. They are incredible for fitness, and they don't require a huge amount of gear and a lot of time and effort to learn the elements of mountaineering that are so time consuming and so knowledge consuming, just learning how to handle yourself in the mountains. So doing those more kind of, I guess, extreme, but also more slimmed down and lightweight versions of mountaineering are such a great way to challenge yourself and get out into the mountains. So these are all the kind of things that I've been thinking of over the last couple of months, guys, as I plan out my coming year of 2020, the climbing that I'm going to do and the physical challenges that I have. I'll be releasing a video next week. I'm going to Norway over Christmas, so I'm going to be making like a vlog style video about what I'm doing in 2020, why I chose the challenges that I chose, and I'll be vlogging a little bit in the first part of next year as I build up to my big challenge in July of next year. Maybe that'll give some of it away. I don't know. Guys, let me know what you're planning to do once you've gone through this process. Put it in the comments section below what your goal is for 2020. I would love to find out. And of course, if I can help you along the way, I would love to. I offer online coaching. If you want to be coached by me, you can. You can check out the link in the description below. I, of course, have programs on my website that you can peruse as well. If you have further questions about this, put it in the comment section below. I'll see you on the summit.